What do you make of my calling out the left-leaning media's what I called cheap attempts to try to equate Trump and Biden when it comes to concerns over Biden's mental acuity?
I think that the criticism of Trump having some lapses is well taken, except that at the end of the day, when I talk to my constituents about this, they kind of just they kind of shrug their shoulders and throw up their hands and say, we're not really focused on that as much as the kitchen table topics that candidates really should be focused on right now. And I think in the debate coming up next Thursday, I believe, everybody's going to be able to tell exactly the mental acuity of each candidate up close and personal. I think it's going to be the most watched debate in television history.
I agree with you about that. But let me ask you a hypothetical. It's not a hypothetical I think you want to address, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If President Biden doesn't do well in the debate, right, if he does seem in some way or another confused, et cetera, he's already down, according to the aggregate of polls, in every single swing state. Would there be a possibility at that point of saying, maybe we got to consider somebody else?
Well, first of all, I guess I disagree with the premise of your question. I think he's going to do just great. But at the end of the day, as you know, the delegates in the primaries are pledged to each of the nominees. The primaries and caucuses basically decide who the nominees are. And it's going to be up to each candidate to, I guess, relinquish their position, which is not going to happen. I think it's going to be a Biden versus Trump rematch. And I think that's what's going to shape up to be the general election.
Fair enough. Are you concerned about the swing state polling?
I'm concerned, but I'm also saying, as you noted, I think maybe earlier in your segments, that there's been an uptick in the president's polling, maybe because of recent events. And I just saw the Fox News poll come out, which is showing the president for the first time taking a lead on Donald Trump. And I think that right now, voters are starting to pay more attention as we go into the fall and into the conventions. And I think that the president's going to do fine.
When you say fine, you mean win or do fine?
Yes, of
win.
course.
Okay, all right. When you said fine, you know, fine. I don't know what fine means. Fine could mean that he loses, gets close to loses.
We're not looking for a participation award here, Dan. We're looking for a clean victory, or as they might say.
Understood. Another issue is immigration, right? Which seems like just a huge topic. The administration now trying to put forth executive order to limit the number of people who can apply for asylum, et cetera. But again, a recent poll, when the question was who would do a better job of handling immigration, 52% saying Trump, 41% say Biden. There are a lot of Democrats now who are angry at Biden for even moving forward with the executive order that he has. He's being sued by the ACLU. Others on the left of your party upset at him for even doing this. Do you think that this executive order was the right thing to do?
Yes, absolutely. I think that people are not happy with the border. It's broken. The immigration system is broken. The asylum system is broken. And unfortunately, Donald Trump has instructed Republicans in Congress not to agree to any legislative solution because, in his words, doing so would give Biden a win. And so in light of that intransigence on the part of my Republican colleagues, the president had to act. And that's what he did in reducing these illegal asylum-seeking moves in between ports of entry. I think that's the right thing to do.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.